Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Conversations on Care, a Facebook talk show bringing together our healthcare partners, our clients, our caregivers to help families better understand and cope with their aging parents who have chronic care needs. My name is Julie Collada, and I'm the proud founder and president of Open Arms Solutions. Open Arms is a home care agency serving the Chicagoland area, focused on inspired home care solutions for seniors with chronic conditions such as dementia, Parkinson's, and other chronic disorders. It is our mission to help families through what can often be a very challenging journey and to know that their loved one is living their absolute best life possible. Just a reminder that if you find these dialogues helpful, please give us a like on Facebook and share us with your friends and family so that it can reach more people who can really benefit from this information. If you have any questions on the topics you'd like to learn more about, please write them in the comments below, and we will look forward to doing everything we can to get a segment booked on that topic. With me today is a very special guest, Ronda Parmacek from Senior Living Partners, to discuss how to find and evaluate the best senior living community options for your loved ones. And it's a pleasure to see you again, Ronda. Actually, you and your family and I go kind of way back. We were just talking about that before the program went live.
We were. We go back to when, unfortunately, my mother-in-law was sick with lung cancer, and towards the end of her illness, she needed care, and she chose to have home care. And who did she think of right away? Nobody other than Julie. And she knew that she had just started her own company. And we had you come and care for our mother, our most beloved mother-in-law, and we couldn't have done it without Open Arms. We really couldn't have. They really helped us, led us through the whole journey with my mother-in-law.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Rhonda. And I will tell you, with the other thing that you and I talked about before the show again was just reminiscing how I got to know your mother-in-law, how she got to know me. Incredibly great memories. She was my great books leader, teaching leader, and great books, for those of you that are tuning in that don't know what that is. I think that was definitely in grammar school.
Yes.
Just a special reading program to get kids excited about reading. And she did that. She was just an exceptional person who made a lasting impression on me.
Yeah, and a lot of people.
And a lot of people. She's just an incredible person.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's a small world, and I was thrilled when I heard you were getting into senior living.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just talk a little bit about, kind of what led you to join Senior Living Specialist. So this is really, as you and I were talking, is really your own business, but it's
Yes.
part of a umbrella of Senior Living Specialist.
Right. Okay. So I have been in senior living for over 18 years. And most of those years were spent inside a community, and I was in sales and marketing, and I had a lot of different responsibilities. And one of my favorite responsibilities was actually working with the families. So when Senior Living Specialist approached me, I knew it was going to be the perfect fit for me, because my most rewarding thing is working with the families. And this job allows me to work with the families one-on-one, go through the journey with them of finding senior living, holding their hands through a very stressful time. And it's very gratifying. So that's why I jumped at the opportunity to work for them.
That makes sense. I appreciate that. I think, and people who have heard my story, I never expected to be in senior living. But once you really understand, and you can see how you help people,
right,
and how much they need help at that point, it's incredibly rewarding.
And they're always, they're always incredibly thankful too. And
It's just an incredible space to be.
yeah,
Offer that kind of value for people in need. So I think we're
yeah,
both very fortunate that we landed in this space.
yes.
So we're here to talk about senior living specifically. But we also often refer to senior living, right? Because we're one of the solutions when families are in need.
Right.
So families come to us, and some families are appropriate for home care, and really that's a good fit for them. And often senior living is a better option for families. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So that's why there's the Solutions and Open Arms Solutions name. But specifically, Rhonda, tell us about what when we say senior living, what are the pieces of that part of the care continuum?
So you mean how is it divided up into independent living?
Yes.
So there's independent living, which is mostly for individuals who are pretty independent. Maybe it's a couple or a single man or a woman who maybe don't want to care for a house anymore. They're tired. They're too tired to cook. They're lonely. They're isolated. So independent living communities provide those things. They provide the housing. They provide the activities. They provide food, dining. And so independent living, but you're pretty much on your own and you have your own apartment and your own privacy. Then there is assisted living, is when you start to need a little more help. You need more assistance. Maybe you're walking a little slower. Maybe you have arthritis and you can't button your shirt. You can't cook anymore. Assisted living is more for those individuals, and they require a little bit more medical. They're a little bit more medically needy. Assisted living can only go to a certain point, though. So there's a window of time where you can be in assisted living, and then there's memory care for those that have dementia, and that's a special type of community that's set up specifically for memory care.
Great. That's helpful for sure. And I would, a very good description. Independent living, in Illinois, there's licensure for assisted living.
Yes.
Illinois Department of Public Health provides rules and regulations, which is a very good thing for assisted living.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And as you said, assisted living provides that additional support people might need with their activities of daily living.
Right.
Right. So there are caregivers, for lack of a better word, embedded in the community that can help with bathing and dressing and help escorting people down to meals, and that's in the community. So they get the benefits of independent having their apartment,
mm-hmm.
but also having the access to more hands-on help when they need it in their community.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Well, thank you for explaining that. There's so many different choices these days. Independent living, though, I will add, is that there's no licensure for independent living. Right. So it's really, it's in many ways, it's like having an apartment, but then you're surrounded with all sorts of resources, as you described.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes some communities that I know, Rhonda, you're very familiar with, have independent living, and then they have assisted living and memory care in the same building, if you will, or the same campus.
Right.
With the idea that people might want to choose that. They want to start out in independent living, but they want to have a plan.
Right.
Or when they need more help, and then they won't have to move.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another part of the spectrum.
Right.
Well, thank you for that description. So take us through how you work with families, how you best work with families to find out what the best options for them are.
Well, really get to know our families. That's the most important thing. We really get to know the senior. We really get to know the families. We have a lot of hard discussions. And then we do a full assessment. We
Give
assess
me an
their.
example. Give us an example, because you just said something that I don't want to, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I
That's
think it's
okay.
really important. You say we sometimes have hard conversations, right?
Yes.
So what would some of those hard conversations sound like? Because I think that's very important for the viewers.
Yes, it is. I can either have some really tough conversations with the senior themselves, where, most seniors don't, they don't want to leave their home. No, nobody is tap dancing their way into an assisted living community. Most people want to stay home. And in some instances, it's either impossible for them to stay home, or their children are worried about their safety and are pushing them towards. And it can be a really difficult conversation. And I deal with it with a lot of empathy. I don't belittle the situation. I empathize with how difficult this is. And I try to tell them the positive options that lie ahead for them if they make a move. So those are with the seniors. With the children, the adult children, I deal with a lot of guilt. There's a lot of guilt involved. They don't want to move their parents. Their parents took care of them. I'm supposed to take care of my parents, but they work full time and they have their own children. And we will talk about how this is really about the whole family. It's not just about the senior, it's about the health of the whole family. And they'll find a lot of times once they move to a community, the family gets closer because they're not caring for that individual. They're not their caregiver. They're spending quality time with them instead of running to the pharmacy, instead of, doing their laundry, instead of, just caregiving in general. They become their daughter again. They become their son again. So I think those kind of conversations help a lot.
That's great. And I think the other thing I would, say from experience is that, well, as you said, leading with empathy is absolutely the right thing to do. And people, you can't fake empathy,
Right. No,
right? It comes from the heart, and then
it
people
does.
understand that you're really trying to help them find the best solution. And these are difficult decisions, but you're really there to help. Um, the So you find out all about the senior and their family and their likes and their dislikes, what's important to them, right?
Mhm.
Um, I imagine you also talk about financials.
Yes.
Okay.
So, just to backtrack a little bit, so not only do we really get to know them, but we do, like I said, a full assessment, and we find out their medical needs, their financial needs, and their social emotional needs. And we discuss all that in the open. Some people are a little uncomfortable. I find the seniors a little more uncomfortable than the adult children. But we eventually get that all put together. And then what we do is we only choose about 2 or 3 communities from the results of getting to know them and doing this assessment. We only choose 2 or 3 communities. We don't overwhelm them with 7, 8, 9 communities like the larger companies do. We keep it very small. And we teach them how to tour. We go through the motions with them. We give them questions to ask. We have lists of questions, very well vetted questions for independent living, assisted living, and memory care. And then we teach them things to look for and what to do during their tour, to stop a resident, ask them how do they like it there, what do they like about it there, what don't they like about it there. We also plan a conversation with them afterwards, after each tour, and we go through the tour because they can kind of blend together after a while.
Sure.
So I make sure that I talk to the senior after every tour, and we talk about the pros and the cons and what they liked and what they didn't like. And that kind of gets our list down. If for some reason they don't like the 2 or 3 that I've handpicked, we can always look at more communities.
Great. And so you said you help coach these families, which is terrific. It's different things to ask for. So what kinds of things in an independent living would you coach them to ask? What kind of questions?
Overall, I would say probably the top question that they ask is, how do you like living here? And you usually get an answer right away. You get an immediate reaction. Oh, we love it here. It's the best thing we ever did. Or you could get somebody who said, this isn't for me, and
Yeah.
the food is lousy. And so I think in general, it's asking if they like it there and what they like about it, what they don't like about it.
Yeah.
Asking them about management and how their reaction time is when they do have a concern. That's a really good question too.
I think that's great advice. So I appreciate the fact that you do this thorough assessment,
Mm-hmm.
and you provide a narrower scope of choices because it can be overwhelming
Yes.
for any of us, that idea. So I think that's a great service. How do you get to know the senior living communities yourself?
Well, that's a good question because it's a very big part of my job is going and touring the communities.
Sure.
I actually like to get to the communities a few times a year, especially those that I refer to a lot. I tour them. I look over the physical building, the actual structure, how it's built, if it's memory care, if it's built in the round. I look at the apartments, the different types of apartments. And I also try at the same time to build a relationship with the management that's there. So during my visits, I usually visit with the management because if I have a relationship with the management, then that builds trust. And then I trust to send my client to go to be a resident at your community. I have to have that trust. So a lot of times I'll learn a lot from touring. I can find out that there's been 3 new executive directors in the past 3 months, and that tells me something.
What does that tell you? I mean, that's very important.
Right. It tells me that things are not as they seem, and that there's stuff going on behind the scenes, and that they don't have the right team put together. Having the right team is the answer to everything, and it takes a while to put together a team.
And
So
you know that personally from your experience in all the years you were in senior living.
exactly.
You know what a team
Exactly.
working together, the difference that can make in the community. So I think
It
that's
makes all the difference in the world. A matter of fact, I can have clients who want to see the bright new shiny penny on the block, well, with the chandeliers and the fancy draperies. And I will tell them a lot of times that sometimes the bright new shiny penny is not the best choice because it takes a while for them to get their team together. And sometimes you're better off, really the most important thing is care. And if somebody's not taking care of your parent or your loved one in the right way, that's all that matters. It's not the drapes, it's not the chandelier, it's the care.
Sure. Very important point. There is a viewer question here, and I want to make sure I don't
Okay.
ask it. It was, how do you determine if your loved one needs a caregiver when living in a community? So sometimes when people move into the community, they either bring an existing caregiver with them. That happens sometimes. I'm sure you've seen that. Or they might need some additional care.
Right. That does happen. It happens in independent living. I find when somebody's had a caregiver with them for a long time and they could either be a companion or they can be an actual caregiver, but they want to be surrounded by other people. But so what they choose to do is live in independent living with their caregiver to resume those caregiving needs with that caregiver. But then they have the socialization of the community. In other cases, there can be somebody who really needs a lot of care. They're very high acuity and they need more than one caregiver. So either the family feels that they need another caregiver there, maybe for nighttime, sometimes, all day. Sometimes someone can become a 2-person transfer and they need more than one caregiver in that situation. So there's a few reasons why somebody would bring a caregiver in.
Thank you for explaining that. So let's just talk a little bit about, you did talk about the fact that um, you do a complete assessment,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So part of that is financial.
Right.
Can you just, I guess, share a little bit about the cost of senior living and kind of the different ways that people
Finance it.
can
Finance it.
yes can finance it? Yeah.
Okay. So independent living, if you want actual numbers, I would say, runs anywhere from 2,000 to 4 to 5,000, depending on where you're choosing to live and how much you can afford. You can also, a lot of times in independent living, add on any needs, any care needs that you have, and just pay for it a la carte. So that helps a lot with
Mhm,
cost.
mhm,
Assisted living, I would say, starts anywhere from $4,500 to $10,000 a month. And memory care is probably anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 a month. It could go higher from there. Financing, it all depends on the individual. There's a lot of people who prepared well for this time of their lives, and it's not a problem.
mhm,
There's some people who took out long-term care policies, and that will take care of them as long as they're in a licensed assisted living community.
mhm.
The long-term care policy will pay for it, and depending how long and what the quantity of money that they can use up in a lifetime. And other financing, when I get people who are don't have as much financially, we can try to get them veterans aid. We, in some cases, will turn them towards a Medicaid solution. So we help with that too, and we help get them to the next step of Medicaid.
Great. And we had a segment from a elder care attorney a couple of episodes ago about qualifying for Medicaid and what's involved in that. So
Yeah.
that's why we all, when we in senior care, we have relationships with a lot of different providers and different expertise. So you and I were talking again before the program. You want an introduction to an elder care attorney because that's we want to be able to advise our clients. We can't provide all the solutions.
Exactly.
And you talked about having a toolkit, and we have,
Right.
we do the same thing. I mean, it's just when we sit down with a family, there are often things that are presented that are needs, incredibly important needs to the family that we
Mhm.
don't provide, but it's very important for all of us in senior living as providers to know our partners and when to get
Right.
them involved.
And to know them well and have them be well vetted,
Yes.
because I don't want to be responsible of turning someone over to a lawyer that didn't work out for them. So we have a very well vetted group of resources for people, so they can
Yeah.
always turn toward. You're one of ours, so that's how we came to this.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And the same for you. So it's great, it really does take a community to help in these scenarios. So
Yeah.
um here's an important question, I think. What's the right timing? This is always the $1 million question that we all of us who have been in senior living uh, face with families. What is the right time for families to start thinking about the next chapter, a move to senior living? And I will tell you, in my story, um, unfortunately, my mom wasn't open to talking about it. Right? You talked about having those difficult
Yeah.
conversations, and my brother, sister, and I were not able to influence her.
Hmm.
I think if I would have had some of the training I have today back then in
Yeah.
terms of how to approach my mom
Hmm.
with these difficult conversations, we could have gotten to a much better situation. But by
Yeah.
the time mom needed help,
Hmm.
and we didn't know what she wanted. We didn't know her finances. We didn't know so much. And so many families come to us in that really awful place.
Right.
So, with that in mind, when do you advise families to start talking about this topic?
Well, there's two different subjects here. There's when I advise them and when they really do it. So they're very different.
Right.
I advise anybody to look into senior living before there's a crisis.
Yes.
But I will tell you that probably 85% of my calls are crisis calls. So the earlier, the better. It's a very, it's very hard for us to bring the subject up to our parents, but it's a very important subject. And I want to empower the senior to be able to choose where they want to live. If there is a crisis, do you want your children choosing where you want to live after the crisis is over, and you can't go back home? So the simple answer is the earlier, the better, but especially before a crisis. If you're noticing that you're feeling that your parents aren't safe at home anymore, there's a fall or there's a burn on a stove, or little things start to happen,
Right.
that's the time to start having the conversation, and that's the time to start touring. And you could just put together a plan. They don't have to move. I actually say that a lot to our seniors. You're not going to move right now, but let's just put together a plan in case something happens, and then you'll be able to move to a community that you wanted to move to and not what your children wanted you to move to.
That's great. So there's another viewer question. Are there circumstances where you will tour communities alongside your clients and families?
Yes, I actually do. I love to do it when I do it. I don't do it with every family. Sometimes there is different families dynamics going on, and it's better that I'm their guide from afar. And then there's other families that really need me to hold their hand, and I will go with them on those tours. And it's great because I can bring up questions that maybe they wouldn't have asked. I can point certain things out to them, and it ends up to be, a win-win for both of us. I get to see the communities again.
Great. Can you just give some examples for the viewers of families you've helped, and what were the scenarios, kind of different scenarios, people who, you took through the process who maybe sadly waited too long?
Yes, I have a lot of those. I just actually dealt with a family situation like that recently. There was a couple that were in their mid 80s, and he was diagnosed with dementia. And the dementia, the symptoms were getting worse and worse. And the wife was dealing with a lot of guilt. She knew she needed to move him to memory care, but she had such guilt that she would take care of him the rest of their lives. They made that promise to each other. But, she's in her mid 80s too. So this is very difficult on her, and her health started to fade. And I kept having these difficult conversations with her, and she just couldn't get over the guilt. And unfortunately, what happened was it led to another crisis situation. 3 months went by. She went to sleep one night, heard the doorbell ring at 3:00 in the morning, and there were the police standing there with her husband. Mm. He was a wanderer, which is part of dementia sometimes. And he got up and he went out in the middle of winter with no coat on, no shoes. And they found him in the middle of a busy intersection. Mm. And thank God he was okay. And that was something that could have been prevented had we been able to get him into a community earlier than that. And of course, right away, I got a phone call the next day, and they were in crisis and they needed to find a place immediately. So those types of things happen all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure. I know they do.
Yeah.
Because we get similar kinds of calls too.
Right,
so,
I'm sure.
And that is, so we have, we really, a lot of us do, I do a talk called The Talk. Mm-hmm. A lot of us have these different, where we speak to community education, which is really, how do you have the conversation? How do you have that difficult conversation? What do you say? what do you do when mom and dad says, no way, I am, plant their feet, and then what do you do? So a lot of us do a lot of education in that, because it's a very, very challenging
It
conversation.
is. It is.
Well, we are really the last question, because we're really out of time. I told you this would go fast.
Yeah.
Is Rhonda, how are you compensated?
We are actually a complimentary service for families, which they find astounding. They can't believe we don't charge. But we, of course, are paid, and we're very transparent about it. We are paid by the communities that we place the seniors in. So we have contracts with, I would say, about 95% of the communities in the Chicagoland area. And when we move in or place a client in one of the communities, they pay us a commission. But we also have that 5% that we don't have contracts with. But if we think it's the right place for that individual, we will still refer that place. We don't want to place somebody in the wrong community. It doesn't look good for us, and we just don't want to do that to the family. So we'll still refer places that we don't have contracts with.
Great. And then what's your geographic scope when people are looking?
It's really the whole Chicagoland area.
Okay.
I mean, we go as far as Aurora to Oak Park, all of Chicago, all the way up to Kenosha. So pretty big area.
Very big area. All right, Rhonda, I think your contact information is in the private chat.
Okay, perfect.
And so actually, I'm going to ask our producers behind the scenes to make sure that's the case. They'll let us know in just a second.
Okay.
Want to make sure that if someone needs to reach you, they have all the contact information. So contact information is in the chat. Thank you, Alex.
Okay. Thank you, Alex.
So thank you so much for spending time. Rhonda, it was a pleasure.
Yes.
Important information. Thank you for what you do. Love to be a partner of yours. So thank you to you and everybody else on your team.
And thank you, Julie. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. My pleasure. Great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye.